Hi, I'm Reid. Welcome back to my booktube channel, Life Worth Reading. This is part 2 of my Brooklyn Nine-Nine book recommendations. If you've seen my first video, which I'll link down below, you'll know that this wasn't supposed to be a 2-part video, but basically I just rambled on forever and I had to cut it. And so here I am on another day wearing the same shirt and continuing the video. I've decided to refilm it just so it'll like a continuous video. And yeah, let's get to the rest of the Brooklyn Nine-Nine characters. Again, if you've missed part 1, basically I'll be recommending books for your favorite Brooklyn Nine-Nine characters. And so if you have a favorite character, I'll be recommending books to you and to them if they were real people. And yes, let's get to it. I'll start this video with the baddest bitch of the precinct, and that is Rosa Diaz. We all know her, we all love her. She is the scariest, but also she is so soft on the inside, and so I'll be doing book recommendations for both the sides of her. If you are also like her, a bad bitch on the outside but a softie on the inside, then these book recommendations are for you. For Rosa's scary, gruesome side, I'll be first recommending Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. I read this book last year. It is a collection of 12 short, really fun and twisted stories. They're pretty much horror stories, all of them, and they have this like speculative freshness to them. They're not just like complete horror stories. There's a lot of the speculative fiction that Yoko Ogawa does so well, but mostly these stories are kind of horrific, kind of gross sometimes, and just brutal. If you enjoy that kind of stuff, if you are also a Rosa Diaz and you love gruesome and terrifying stuff, then this book is for you, and I think you'll really enjoy it. It's a very short read. I read it in one sitting and it was just really gripping, and also all the stories are intertwined, so it's very fun to read. And yeah, that's my first scary book recommendations for any Rosa Diaz's out there. The other one that I have is more of a mainstream read, but that is Bunny by Mona Awad. This will be hit or miss for a lot of people. I enjoyed it until mostly the end, and then it just started like womp womp, you know, like it just wasn't for me. But it ended up being a 3-star read, and I know that it's for like either a 5-star read or like a 2-star read for a lot of people. So it is very hit or miss, but I think that's also the fun of it, just discovering which side you are on. And yeah, basically this book explores like female friendships and like frenemies with a lot of weird, very, very weird, and sometimes kind of gross stuff in the middle. Sometimes it gets very gruesome and kind of horrific, like I know Rosa would enjoy, while also exploring the female connections in this book, which I know Rosa also enjoys due to her friendship with Gina and Amy. And so I think this would be a really fun recommendation for any of you that are interested in it, and just have fun reading it and discovering if you love it or if you hate it. Now, attending to Rosa's soft side as well, it is not hidden that she loves rom-coms, and so I had to put some romance recommendations on this video. And to start them, I will say I think Rosa would be really into like the enemies to lovers thing. She had this really weird and off relationship with Pimento, and we know she started by not trusting him but also being really attracted to him. And so I think that she would really love the trope of enemies to lovers. And for that, I have the Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, which I haven't read, but a lot of people seem to love, and they say it is enemies to lovers really well done. And the other one I have is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which I just read this month. It will be in my January wrap-up. And honestly, even though, if any of you have read The Hating Game, please let me know if you agree with me. I think that the hate to love in this book is so mild. Like, it is so obvious from the beginning that they like each other and they don't hate each other at all, but still it is a fun to see that little tension where they like pretend to dislike each other. And I don't know, I just think that Rosa would be really into that trope in romance books. The other romance recommendation that I'll mention is one that I haven't read yet, but is very high on my romance TBR. I think it'll be the next romance that I do read, and that is Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. From what I've heard about this book, almost all of it reminds me of Rosa. It is not enemies to lovers. I think it's like friends to lovers and like are friends with benefits to lovers, which I also think would suit Rosa if I'm being quite honest. But what really caught my attention and that really reminded me of Rosa's character is that our main character is bisexual, and she's also like afraid to fall in love, which I think that Rosa would really resonate with if she read this book, since she's also bisexual, and I think that she's also scared of getting into her feelings. Even though she has a lot of relationships throughout the show, she's not completely afraid of falling in love, but I think she holds herself back a lot, like our main character or Dani Brown does. And so I really have heard nothing but good things about that. And I think that Rosa, or any Rosas out there, would enjoy this book as well. And the last kind of soft recommendation that I have for Rosa's character, or for any of you that identify with her, is the Heavy Vinyl graphic novel series. This is a graphic novel series by Carly Usdin. I think that I'm pronouncing that maybe wrong, I'm not sure. Basically, this graphic novel series is about Chris, our main character, who I'm almost 100% sure is a lesbian. I could be wrong, I've read this a long time ago, but indeed she is queer, and she starts working in this indie record store with a bunch of other girls, and she also has a crush on one of her coworkers, Meg, I think was her name. But what Chris discovers, and this is not a spoiler, it's like in the description, is that this indie record store, these girls that work there, are also part of like a teenage vigilante fight club. I know, like that's literally so Rosa. Like you have the softness of like female friendships and like this girl that's crushing on another girl, and then you have the badassness of they also have like a teenage vigilante fight club. I think that Rosa would thrive reading this, and I think that any of you that are interested in it should give it a try. Then we have our favorite dramatic queen, we have Gina Linetti. And so for her book recommendation, I'll be very specific. Honestly, I see Gina, if Gina was a big reader, which she's not on the show, but honestly I could see Gina just like reading a teenage like dramatic series. Like I could honestly see her like reading the Pretty Little Liars series, or like Vampire Academy, even Twilight. Honestly, I could see her reading those, but I'm not like actively recommending those to you because I haven't read most of them. But what I will recommend, and the first book that I had to think about this, but when I did, it really did make me think of Gina, is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Besides this being a fabulous book that I know BookTube loves, it did remind me of Gina because it is so dramatic and drama-filled. This book follows our main character, Evelyn Hugo, who was a film star, a big Hollywood film star in the 50s. And basically it just follows her life, her very dramatic Hollywood life. It reminded me of Gina because of the gossips, the rumors, the way that she married 7 people. It is, even though that it covers a lot of hard topics and a lot of more complex things, I think that is overall just a very entertaining read. And I think that Gina would really enjoy like the gossip headlines, the marriages, the failures of those marriages, and just her life as a star. I think that Gina would really like that. And for any of you that haven't read this book yet, I definitely recommend it. It is not like my absolute favorite, but it was really great and just very entertaining, and a perfect pick for like any Ginas out there. And the other book recommendation that I have for Gina is a classic, which I know you'll be thinking like, Gina classics, that doesn't sound right. But when I explain this book and why I picked it, I think it'll make sense for a lot of you. And that is The Portrait or The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. First of all, this is just my favorite classic ever. So like I'm totally biased, but I think that this is the most fun classic that I've read. And if you know anything about Oscar Wilde, he was a Gina Linetti. Like he was so dramatic, so narcissist, like so like almost everything that I've read about Oscar Wilde kind of like makes me think that he and Gina would be like the bestest of friends. But it is also said that Oscar Wilde was a queer man, which I definitely see it. And so he was just like a very dramatic narcissist person that wrote this book about, you guessed it, Dorian Gray, that is equally dramatic, equally narcissist, and honestly kind of queer as well. And so I think that this book would be perfect for Gina. If you know this book, basically the synopsis is that Dorian Gray, he makes a deal with the devil to literally make sure that he never grows old and is always beautiful. I mean, is there anything more Gina Linetti than that? Like, he was just so obsessed with himself, and it made for a really fun book. It made for a very entertaining read. And if you know Lord Henry, if you read this book, he's also a problematic fave. And I don't know, I just think that Gina, Dorian Gray, Oscar Wilde, they will all be like best friends, like obsessed with themselves and each other. And so this classic is so much fun. It has so many twists at the end, and you should definitely give it a try if you haven't read it yet. We have arrived to what I think is my favorite character of the show, and that is Captain Raymond Holt. I love Raymond Holt. He's by far the funniest character on the whole show. Like, he is just hilarious. Like, any scene that he's in, I'm already laughing. And even though it was kind of hard coming up with book recommendations for him, because we all know they likes kind of just boring stuff, and I wasn't just gonna give you like a bunch of boring book recommendations. So yeah, it was just kind of hard for me to give his character book recommendations that wouldn't be too boring for you guys. But I think that I've come up with a fair share of book recs for you. So let's get started. Like Amy Santiago, I honestly see Raymond Holt reading a lot of nonfiction. He loves learning, he loves studying. And so I wanted to give some nonfiction recommendations that wouldn't be too boring, that he would be interested in. And I think that the first ones are the Sapiens Zoology by Yuval Noah Harari. We have the first one, which is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, and then we have the second book, which is the only one that I actually own, which is Homodeus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. I think that I would love these books. I think it is like history explained in a less boring way and in a less complex way, which I think makes it more accessible to everyone, even people that are not specifically interested in history. And so I definitely see Raymond Holt reading these types of books. There's a lot more complex and tedious reads out there, but I think that this would be a fun one for anyone that's trying to get into nonfiction or that wants to learn about history of humankind without it being too much. The other nonfiction recommendation that I have for Raymond Holt's character is the book The Pink Line, Journeys Across the Queer Frontiers by Mark Gevisser. I'm not just mentioning this book because Raymond Holt is gay and a part of the LGBTQ plus community, but I think that he would be really interested in reading this book, as am I. I am mentioning because this is very high on my nonfiction TBR. I still haven't managed to get a hold of this book, but Pretty Ex Bookish was the one that put it on my radar. She said that she really enjoyed it and that it's a very refreshing look on the queer frontiers and the queer history, and so I really want to give it a read, and I thought that I would put this book also on your radars if you're interested in it. And I think that Raymond Holt would be very excited to read this book, and I think that he would enjoy it. And in terms of classics, the one book that I'll recommend for Raymond Holt would probably be The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Obviously, I have not read this book. This is a big ass book. This is what you call a big ass book, which I haven't had the courage to read yet. This is very intimidating to me. And I don't know, it just reminds me of Raymond Holt. Not just because it is very long, but, which also because it is very long, but it is a story of a man and basically revenge. He's deemed a traitor, and so like the whole book is literally just him escaping prison and planning his revenge. And also I thought about this book because if you watch the show, you know that Raymond Holt has a very interesting relationship with another captain, Madeline Wunsch. And I think that since they are always bickering and I don't know, Holt is just always planning like his revenge towards her, I think that he would find comfort in reading this big ass book and then identifying with the character that's trying so hard to get revenge on another person. I honestly tried my absolute hardest to find some book recommendations for Hitchcock and Scully, but I really wasn't able to. If you can think of any recommendations for both of them, please do let me know, because I was just empty-headed. I could not think of one book recommendation for Hitchcock and Scully. So I'm sorry that those are missing, but I really couldn't think of anything, and I didn't want to just give random books that didn't have anything to do with them. And so yeah, I apologize for that. And like really briefly touching on the character of Adrian Pimento, which is more of a side character, but he does appear a lot throughout the show. And for him, honestly, if he were younger, I could definitely see him reading The Hunger Games. Like, he would love that shit. Like, he would eat that shit up. Like, he would love just being in an arena and killing everybody else and just reading about how people kill each other and like how they come up with the games and like the way that the arenas work. I could see him really enjoying that, but you know. Another book recommendation that I had for him was like, I thought about like, what's the weirdest, most disgusting book that you have heard of? And honestly, the one that came to mind was The Troop by Nick Cutter. I haven't read it yet. I'm still gathering up the courage to read that book because people have said that it's very brutal and it's discussed. It is basically about like this Boy Scouts in Canada that are like in an island, and a man comes in and just starts spreading this weird disease, and they start doing really weird shit. I don't know, it sounds gross, and so I thought it would be perfect for Adrian Pimento, but I haven't read it yet, so I could be wrong. Okay, and this was the second part of my Brooklyn Nine-Nine book recommendations. If you love the show as much as I do, I hope that you did enjoy this video. I hope you agree with my recommendations, or that at least I put a few books on your radar. If you did enjoy it, please do remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.